Hello. Good evening. Greetings to you all. Bill and I are back tonight, and tonight we are with Edmond van Esbroeck, if I
That's
pronounced it
correct.
right.
That's
Thank you.
correct.
Edmond is gonna, he's been through the process, and wanna tap into his knowledge when it comes to self-representation in the courts and how the system, pretty much is structured and how much of a mess it is. Um, and so he's going to help us. He's going to help us navigate through the process of self representation. He did it for himself. Initially, he started using a lawyer, and then decided that he was going to self-represent. Bill did the same thing. Bill actually is also one of the experts when it comes to self-representations. I know he helps a lot of others, to do that. As usual, if you have any questions directly to Edmund, you can, post it in the chat window, um, or you can, ask any questions. If you want to come, live on the show as well, just prompt me on the platform, and I'll send you a link, and then you can join and ask your questions as well. And so, Edmund, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us tonight. I really appreciate your time, and how much knowledge you have in this area of software representation. Bill, as always, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
It's been a pleasure working with you, and we are such a good team. Trying to raise awareness. So thank you so much. Um, so Edmond, I know you've been involved. You've been involved in the process, right? Going through lawyers, eventually deciding to self-represent, and also how the system worked against you in the process. Do you want to share with us how you got involved in this, in this movement? Um,
I think like all of us. Otherwise, we wouldn't be on this podcast. We we we've been in a divorce process to start with, and in the beginning, it's very scary. You don't know anything about it. So the first thing you do, okay, I need a lawyer. It's scary. Everything is scary. You think your life. I won't say your life is over, but you think you you need a lawyer, and I think that's how I got involved. And initially, we were in collaborative law, and my professional background is basically international. I had international jobs or projects,
mhm,
and I dealt a lot with professional lawyers. Talking corporate lawyers. So I thought, well, if I have a lawyer, I can expect performance. I can expect uh, experience, professionalism, especially in family law. You would expect people or lawyers to be able to deal with conflict
right.
and also have understanding of basic finances and stuff like that.
Mm.
So in collaborative law, so we went through collaborative law, and you have to understand. Do I have to explain a little bit about collaborative law, or do people
Yeah,
understand
please
what it
do. Yeah,
means?
yeah, please do. Yeah, just for those that may not know what it is.
So collaborative law is basically it's a luxury. It's a luxury uh, form of mediation. Each party has a lawyer, and these lawyers help you mitigate or mediate together uh, to come to an agreement on parenting and on the financials. That's basically in a nutshell what collaborative law is. There's some conditions on collaborative law, and that's basically if one fires a lawyer, then your own lawyer cannot be representing you anymore, also not in the future. So these collaborative law sessions are normally like 4 or 5 hours at a time. And so you have to understand the cost of that is about $1,000 an hour. So from a rational perspective, if you look at how simple divorce actually is, if you really analyze it, it's basically about parenting and then the financials. And parenting, you can do 50-50. In certain
Mhm.
cases, a little bit, there's other, other items at play. So I went into collaborative law, and the first 5 hours, it, it was amazing. I was shocked about the lack of professionalism. Um, I
Okay.
mean, I expect some very basic. Okay, let's have a structure here. Let's have structure here. Let's have talk about parenting first. Or let's talk about bigger picture first, and then parenting, and then we do the matrimonial property stuff and the payments. So, I thought they would have a lot of knowledge of that. But then there was quite a cold shower for me, and again, I thought, divorce is not that. It's beside emotions. It's not that difficult. 50-50 kids, or 70-80 kids, 70-30 kids, or whatever. And then you come to an agreement on the finances and the child support payments, and then matrimonial property. I gave you one example of a discussion we had, there was between the lawyers about credit card debt. And it took them more than an hour to debate if it was a liability or an asset. I mean, I have a whole list of that kind of stuff, and it was shocking to me. So after 3 sessions of 15 hours, the only result was basically a 3-liner interim parenting order of child and spousal support, and a statement that travel cost would be reimbursed from me. So here we're talking about less than a one-pager, basically three essential lines in the parenting order, and you paid $40,000 for that.
Yeah.
So I was talking to my friends, lawyers all around the world, because I dealt with them, and they were shocked too. They said, "Well, this is not that difficult, guys. You need some professionals." So basically, that's basically my experience with collaborative law. There's no performance, there's no project approach or timelines. Okay, let's do that item, and so on and so on. So long story short, my ex-partner then fired her lawyer for other reasons than performance. But so I was initially, so I was without a lawyer, and I thought, what the hell is going on? What am I going to do now? Hire another lawyer for so much money and no performance? And then by coincidence, I came into contact with a volunteer organization here in Edmonton who exists already since 1994. It's called ECMAS, and it's a difficult name, but it says basically it's an Equitable Child Maintenance and Access Society. And they basically help you, guide you. You still have to do all the work yourself to self-represent. So I went to some of these meetings, and basically the meetings were quite simple. You can, everybody gets a turn. You can whine for about 5 to 10 minutes about your case, and then it's basically saying, okay, how can we help you to move forward? How can we help you deal with the conflict, or how are you going to move forward with any applications? I call it the circus, the paperwork circus in the court system. And that's a little bit how I got involved with self-representation. And the more I thought about it and the more I learned from this, I found out it's all not that difficult. It's very scary in the beginning because you have this imagination that these lawyers are like in TV series, have endless stories in court and so on, and the enormous paper jungle which are falling up on you. And so that's a little bit how I got involved in self-representing in court. What I did actually too is I went a few times to court to sit in on court cases or in morning chambers. And then you suddenly realize, okay, there's more people self-representing. And the second, also, you realize a lot of lawyers can barely talk in public, or they can't stick to the facts. And it's not about denigrating, because I'm sure there's some really good lawyers. I've met some very, very good lawyers. But in general, I was kind of shocked about the quality of family law here.
And where are you located?
I'm located in Edmonton.
Okay. So
I'm kind of also stuck in Edmonton, but it's a whole different story. But that's the way it is, and that's how it works. My children are in Chicago. It's it's a long story short, but that's basically it.
Okay. Well, the collaborative approach doesn't seem much different than the normal approach to a divorce. The two lawyers basically argue it out and fill out billable hours, and nothing gets completed or done. It's an adversarial system, and because of that, they argue every single issue. And when you do that, there is no resolution, and there is no moving forward. And like you said, there needs to be some emphasis.
Sorry. My
There, no,
apologies.
yeah, there needs to be some emphasis on resolving these issues instead of fighting over nickels and pennies of who owes for what, and it costs you more to argue that.
Yeah, no, it's not really that. I did a, I'm a mediator myself. I mean, that's a long story short in my different career. I dealt a lot of conflict in corporate and all kind of other issues in financials and IT and stuff like that. But so I thought, well, let's do a mediation certificate here in Alberta. So I took the mediation courses here, the whole hoops, and you know how that goes. And it was very interesting because you meet a lot of people with different backgrounds, but you also meet a lot of lawyers in these mediation courses. And I have to admit, they were very difficult to work with, even to practice with. They don't, and it's maybe the education here, I don't know, but they love conflict.
Yes, that's what they're paid to do, is to pick a side and stick to it and fight for that side, whether it's right or wrong.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
so that's a little bit how I got involved, and yeah, I think in my case I've seen most of it because the other thing what I found with self-representing, and you have to know my case a little bit more, but um, I found a lot of stuff out about lawyers outside court. Well, how they perform outside court, how they black, how you call it, make you a black sheep in children's services and all kind of other organizations, even your work, your employer.
Yeah.
You don't know about it, but I found out. I did a lot of Freedom of Information Act requests after a couple of years, and then I found out a lot about what actually happened and what also explains certain behaviors of people around me.
Yeah. And that's good. I'm glad you did that, and that's part of the process of what they do and how they manipulate and control the situation. That what you're stating is a form of triangulation. They're getting some sort of information from you, some information from your ex, then they're going to your employer or people around you or agencies you work with and providing them with false information to help, to try to align them with their side.
Yeah, but it's the sad part of it is again, I don't want to mention any names yet, but you find out that they declare you for mentally ill and all kind of other stuff. It's amazing, and that you're hiding money and all kind of other drama. But you were just in court with medical experts telling courts that you're one of the most sane persons you could ever meet. And even
Yeah.
my approach is very amicable, also financially. I bailed out my ex-spouse quite a few times, and my children and all kind of other people I bailed out in the process. But it's interesting to see those documents, and then you confront them with the Law Society, for example, and I was shocked by that. But then you find out, well, it's all allowed because they express an opinion.
Yes. Now, you don't want to mention names, but I'm happy to.
I can mention names too because it's allowed. It's allowed by the Law Society because you're allowed to do this.
Well, one judge, Judge Hugh McClellan, declared he thought I was suicidal, and that's part of the reason why he was making the decision against me and awarding custody to my ex. He's not qualified to make that decision. He's not an expert in mental health issues, and again, to make a decision on custody and access based on his opinions is outside the purview of his scope of his job, for which I am contemplating filing a civil lawsuit against him personally. Also, Judge Dennis R.X. Delaquist similarly did similar actions to me in court. He was making decisions based on his opinions rather than the information I had provided to him. And if he had read the file, he would have been aware of what my position was in the matter. And he said, I wanted to bring an expert in to do an assessment of the children, someone who's qualified to recognize whether or not they're suffering from abuse throughout the situation. And he said, well, what good is that going to do? You're going to have your expert, she's going to have her expert. And I'm like, that's not the way a medical opinion is, a medical diagnosis is. If someone's got cancer, you don't get somebody else to say they don't have cancer. If you have a medical diagnosis, it's a medical diagnosis, it's a fact. So you can't argue against it, but that's what the judge's belief was, that you know, you're going to have your opinion. She's going to have her opinion. Well, no, if we get a medical professional in to do proper assessment, they will make a diagnosis of the situation, and that is irrefutable.
So yeah, Ben asked me what are the requirements for self-representing. Well, actually, there's a lot of guidance in the courts too. To the documents on. I mean, in Alberta there is. I'm not sure about Ontario because I don't check that out all the time. But in general, there are documents on how to self-represent yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of free information. There's also a lot of free information by the courts. People forget that, but so there's a lot of free information here in Alberta about it goes through resolution services. They have a special office beside the courthouse, I call it, and they can provide you with the paperwork. Because basically what happens is, in divorce is very simple. At the end of the day, it's 50-50 kids or whatever you decide or whatever reason there is. And then the matrimonial property is quite simple too. That's just finance. That's just net assets. But as soon as you enter the court system, if you cannot work it out amicably, like a lot of people do actually, because a lot of people, and that's a compliment for them, they divorce on their own for less than $500. I see them here in a courthouse, sometimes even with their children. And I give them a compliment. You did a great job. Yes, we want to be an example for our children. We want our children to be proud of us.
And that's it. Over 90% of divorces will resolve prior to trial. And it varies by province. I think it's 98% in New Brunswick, and I think it's around 90% in Ontario. And again, it varies by province. And we're seeing a higher number of people in Ontario being self-represented and less cases resolving prior to trial. So there are more and more high conflict cases happening. And the problem is, since so many cases are handled the same way and resolved prior to trial, the judges will try to delay things. And, the people are there because when you have a divorce, it's two parties. But for there to be no resolution, it only takes one party to continue the conflict.
Yeah.
And that's the problem. No, that's the problem. They can't identify. In every case of a high conflict divorce, you have one or two personality disorders involved, either narcissistic or borderline personality disorder. They're the ones that are driving the case. Now, according to Dr. Stephen Miller, in the study he conducted for the state of Massachusetts, he said the lawyers and the judges make wrong decisions 95% of the time in high conflict cases because they cannot identify the victim and the abuser.
Yeah.
They see the person that is the victim of abuse, and they show up to court and they're emotional and erratic, and they're not displaying normal range behavior for a normal range person. It's because they're displaying traumatic behavior for a traumatized person who's been the victim of abuse. The other person who is the abuser is calm and collected.
Yeah.
So these situations are counterintuitive, and instead of recognizing that this person who is shaky and erratic and emotional is the problem, is the victim of abuse in this case, they see them as the cause of the problem, why there is no resolution in the case. Yeah. And 95% of the time they make decisions against them.
I think we have to take one. Sorry, Ben.
Right.
I think we have to take one step back. What is high conflict? High conflict is always caused, and in 99% of the cases, by mental health of at least one person.
Yes.
And what I found out, and that's maybe generalization for at least one person, but often more, including the lawyers. No, seriously, because I have a lot of evidence. I mean, if you see the facts, which I can show later,
That's
but
true. Yeah.
It's amazing. So the frustration is basically for a lot of people is, you have children, you have boundaries for children.
Yes.
Well, you say, okay, you can't play with the whatever the gaming show or whatever they do. You can only play for 2 hours, and then the rest of the day you have to play outside or you have to do other stuff. So you don't enable bad behavior.
Right.
But the challenge with all this stuff is, and I'm going back to professionalism and knowledge and basic stuff, the family law system enables bad behavior, enables false accusations.
Yes.
And they tell us how to parent. And that's the challenge I think you have. If you would have just, set out rules and boundaries, We wouldn't spend so much taxpayers' money, beside our own money, on court.
I mean, from my own personal experience, the lawyers actually play a very big role in high conflict divorce cases. Sometimes the case conferences that they exchange, you will read some of these materials, and it just triggers your anger, right? So, and I know why they do that, right? Because they want the conflict to be ongoing. They want to prolong it. It's all about how much money they can get from these parents. So, most of the time these lawyers are behind it. They are the main ones, because two parties will go to court. They may be at peace, maybe they will disagree over some things, to seek the help of the court. But then once the lawyers get involved and they start exchanging letters and whatnot, it makes the situation a lot
Worse.
worse than it was before. But going back to self-representation, I've had people reach out to me, basically scared, really really scared to go self-represent themselves, because what people originally do is they reach out to lawyers, trying to get an idea how much it's going to cost them and how much of a risk it is to self-represent versus having a lawyer involved. And almost 100% of the time the lawyers will tell you it's a bad idea to self-represent,
I tell you,
right?
yeah. So I tell you, I was scared in the beginning too, but I was in this group of ECMAs, and you soon realize it's all not that difficult. Family law is one of the most, between brackets, simple law. I mean, there is limited law on child support and stuff. That's all regulated, but a lot of stuff is just in discretion of the judge. It
Yes.
really comes down to it, and you have
Yes,
some
it does.
you have some precedents set here and there about certain things, but in general, it's pretty simple, and the outcomes of amicable versus high conflict is often very similar. Actually, at the end of the day, the parenting order, the net assets, and so on, except the fact that the assets are looted by lawyers, so there's not that much left.
Yes.
So, yes, it's scary in the beginning, but if you educate yourself about the principles, and if you become part of a support group, which, of course, there's a lot of people who are angry and bitter about the system. You can't help everybody.
Mhm.
A lot of people also don't recognize they have challenges or they need help, also mental help. Um, but at the end of the day, it's not that difficult. You just go to court and check it out. The challenge for a lot of people is the paperwork jungle. As soon as you go into the court system, there's a paperwork jungle. But if you give them examples, we give them examples, and we give them examples, actual affidavits and stuff like that, applications. You will be surprised how easy it is for people to put their own paperwork in.
Yes, there. Part of that problem is if my case, for example, like you were saying, how do you differentiate high conflict from a normal case? My divorce would be listed as a normal one because it was resolved without a trial. Yet here I am 7 years after, still without a trial with a number of outstanding issues. And I've been the subject of investigations by Child Protection based on false reports. I've been arrested twice by the police, again on false reports. And it's an ongoing abuse by the system, and still the threat of taking my children away from me. Which
Enablement, and that's the sad part. I mean, don't laugh about this. We had a case of one of our members, and he was picked up by the police because one of the teachers thought the child was abused because the child had some red spots on the face. Because the child was transported to the hospital, and the hospital had found out it was the crayons from the teachers. I mean, so you can understand the emotion
yes,
and that kind of drama. And the sad part of it is the false accusation people. I call it the people who do all these false accusations, including lawyers. They're not
flying
accountable,
monkey.
but they take away the time and energy for the real cases of abuse, and that's the sad part of it. That's what I feel sorry for.
Well, psychological emotional abuse is real abuse.
Yeah.
And province of New Brunswick, they don't have anyone working for the Child Protection Agency that is qualified or capable of recognizing whether a child is suffering from psychological or emotional abuse.
Yeah.
So they're completely negligent in that fact. And every child in the province of New Brunswick that is suffering from psychological and emotional abuse that has been checked over by Child Protection Services in the province of New Brunswick has been returned to that psychologically abusive environment, because none of the people doing these assessments have the ability or qualifications to recognize whether or not they're being abused.
But I think, if you look at a divorce, it's at the end of the day, it's very simple. It's about children. Children are money, and that's the biggest thing.
Yeah.
And then net assets. But net assets, the net assets division is in general, if you're not a multimillionaire, it's pretty simple, from a financial point of view.
Yes.
But the children are money, and that's the key. And there's not only money, but a lot of emotional, because people say, well, the mother is a better parent or the father is a better parent. No, both parents might have a different style. It's something different when there's abuse, physical abuse, and that kind of stuff. It's safety issues, but in general, both parents are just parents. But going back to self-representing, I mean, I get a lot of questions also about, well, do you need a lawyer? For divorce, you don't need a lawyer.
No.
You just, as long as even people do it themselves, people say, well, you need a lawyer. No, you don't need a lawyer, because you can do it yourself. If you're amicable and it's all reasonably fair, a judge will sign off on it. Then the other thing we see is legal aid. And that's a big misunderstanding about legal aid, because people think legal aid is for free. Legal aid is not for, in Alberta, it's not for free.
No.
You have to pay that back. So basically, legal aid is based on income. So let's say I make $80,000. I pay $40,000. Half of my net income goes to my ex for whatever reason. I'm under poverty level. I'm not qualifying for legal aid because I make officially $80,000, while somebody who doesn't work, for example, qualifies. So one way I'm happy I wasn't eligible for legal aid, because I see people with bills of $20,000 legal aid, which I have to pay back, and they're already below poverty level. And I see, again, the $20,000 is about $100 per hour. Again, no performance. For $20,000 for all these hours, you can for 200 hours, that's basically a month full time. You can expect at least something more than just a parenting order.
You would expect but again, when it comes to family law, they're preying on families. They're destroying families by the whole process. They're taking all the assets and yes, of both parents, and they're changing the whole lifeline of the children.
I'm working on a workshop, how to divorce, and it's basically it goes about, first, a cold shower is about data, financial, what the divorce statistics, how does it work, how much does an average lawyer cost you, etc., etc., etc. And then there's a whole section of how to deal with conflict. There's all kind of stuff for that. But the cold shower is basically, if I look at the payback time of a lawyer for the average Joe and Jill here in society, you're talking 20 years.
Yeah.
Or more, or even the next generation is paying back the lawyers.
Yes.
And that's very shocking. And if you don't educate people about that, so I think you have to start educating people about divorce even before divorce, so you can manage that whole thing better.
I believe there was a case in Ontario where both parties, and I think they were just the average people, a police officer and a nurse or teacher, or they were professionals.
That's good income already.
Yeah, but they each racked up $500,000 in legal fees for their divorce, because it lasted like 43-day trial.
What are you going to do? What are you going to talk about for 43 days? What are you going to talk about for 43 days?
43 days, I believe. It was probably about 4 years ago now. It was $1 million divorce, and it was just two average people. So the rest of their lives, they're in debt, and most likely their children are going to be in debt. So this court allowed this process to go on for 43 days between these two people and let the lawyers take all of their money.
But what are you going to talk? But what are you going to talk about 43 days? I see trials here of 5 days. I mean, that's already hard to fill that up.
Again,
the only reason I guess is how much money the lawyers can get out of it, right? I mean, a nurse, a teacher, they make decent income, right?
Yeah.
So for them, and they look into their properties. So if they see their property, they see the money, they see a lot of money going to their pockets,
But it,
right? So they'll
yeah.
drag it. They'll drag it as long as they want, just to basically get them broke.
They'll
So
argue as long as people throw money at them.
yeah, but
Yeah.
I think we should start educating people before they get married, or or at least in the process. These are the implications. This is how you can do it best. And you see now more and more also in the US, certain states are doing 50-50 kits, and
Yeah.
the
Yeah,
50-50 kits resolves a majority of the issues.
it
And
does.
and
Kansas, it cut the cases down 50% in 1 year. So
and,
that's a
and it,
huge number.
it's not only for people's money, but also the taxpayers' money and the clogging of the courts here.
Mhm.
Yes,
And you also understand, because it's a billion-dollar business, there's a lot of special interest groups are against this.
Yeah.
yes,
And all the research shows also that even if it's high conflict, and even if there's some other underlying issues, both parents have to be in children's lives, no matter what.
Yeah.
Safety issues is a different story, but I'm talking about the average parent wants to have the best for the kids. Yes, the mom and dad quarrel about stupid stuff, but at the end of the day, 50-50 takes away a lot of business from lawyers. And
yes.
but it also it's best for the children, no matter what.
It is. Even in high conflict cases, it's proven that having an equal shared parenting model with two parents that are in constant conflict, that follow a parallel parenting schedule, is better than having one parent with a majority of the time over the other.
I mean, I see even on all kind of Facebook forums, and I've tried to mitigate a little bit, but people all start barking straight away about my mental health of my ex-wife or ex-husband, and narcissistic this and narcissistic that. Well, you have to manage conflict. You have to learn how to manage conflict. That would be the second step beside educating yourself, is how do you manage conflict. There's all kind of rules for that. So it's very important to understand um, how to manage conflict and not react straight away on an email. There's certain rules, for example, about communication. If you
Mhm.
receive an email from your ex-wife or ex-husband, whatever it is, or ex-partner, don't react straight away, because just wait for 24 hours. Think about it, and only deal with one item, not with the 5 items in the email, because that's not going to
Yeah.
resolve it. You understand what I'm saying?
Yes,
So,
gray rock method is one of the best. You try to remain emotionless and monotone when communicating with them, and like you said, not addressing the multitude of issues that they'll bring up, trying to provoke you and antagonize you and lead you into an argument where again they're controlling the situation and controlling your emotions.
I mean, the other case, for an example, recent example I just recently saw, is a woman who complains about her husband, that because the woman had a change in shift of work, whatever, and her ex-husband was not able to take the kids, or not willing to take the kids. Huh? So you think, well, the husband is the bad guy here, but he already had other meetings in his life or whatever, and he couldn't make it. But you also see back, it's a while ago, the husband asked the ex-wife to take care of the kids because he had something pop up for work, and she
Mm.
also refused that straight away. So your conflict, you think it fires back at you. So you have to understand conflict. Sometimes you just have to make it work.
Yeah. Yeah.
Even if you don't like it, you have to make it work, because next time your neighbor or somebody else needs the help,
Hmm.
or yourself.
Hmm. And just going back to one of the things that you talked about the money that is involved. I mean, when we talk about divorce, it comes down to the children and the money,
Yeah.
right? Um, and I know in Alberta, you guys have the MEP, the Maintenance Enforcement
Oh yeah.
Program.
I'm an
Ontario, we
expert.
have child support. Ontario, we have the child support, and I see a lot of parents that struggles through that system. How did you manage to pull through that?
Oh, so I have to tell you, I'm a financial IT guy. Huh? So, and to make a long story short, I mean, a couple of years ago, before I got onto MEP in 2014, I interviewed about 100 lawyers over time, but a lot of people know about MEP, Major Enforcement Programs. So you have to understand there's a Major Enforcement Act in each province. And basically, the Major Enforcement Act gives unlimited powers to these enforcement agencies. You have to take them very seriously because they can take your license, your house, the whole package. They can fine you, even for no reason. They can fine you. You're surprised about it, but it's all about the discretion of the director of MEP. And they also change MEP directors every 2-3 years because there's underlying issues. So you have to understand the major enforcement group here in Alberta, for example, they collect hundreds of millions of dollars. Hundreds of millions of dollars. And actually, what I found out over the years, because I dealt with them, um, none of them has any financial background. Yeah, they have an accountant, but I can tell you a story because my case is goes a bit further than that. But by law, they're always correct. No matter what, they're always correct in their calculations. In my case, because I have to transfer money to the US, um, my ex-wife was advised by her lawyer, and again, the lawyer had no clue. The same with no clue about finances or no clue about. Well, she was bad mouthing you outside the system anyway. But so she was advised to collect money through MEP. So I deal with HFS Illinois, so MEP Illinois, and I deal with MEP Alberta. So in 2014, they came after me because, a long story short, because I was an overpayment. I've always been an overpayment for years, always, no matter what they did to me. And they came after me, and then I got my license taken, and then all kind of other stuff was, they enforced everything. And then the next day you got a letter, well, everything, I'm in overpayment. And the next day you got another letter from them, and I'm in underpayment. So I think it goes on for a year.
Yeah.
So then I provided them all the documents. And I said, well, why can't you see the bank statements? It shows exactly how much I paid directly to my ex before I got onto MEP, of course. And then, like a long story short, I had to go back to court. And of course, MEP failed to show up. And the judge said, well, yeah, and then even the lawyers admitted, yeah, you're in overpayment. It has to stop. The terror has to stop. I was cycling 150 kilometers a day to work, in the winter. So, and again, they didn't follow the court order. So what happened? So since 2014 till to this date, I'm an overpayment. There's continuous errors on the file. I took them to court in 2019 for continuous errors. And these were continuous errors. It's not about, today we make this error, So, but then that civil judge decided that it passed the statute of limitation for 2 years on continuous errors. So I got fined $5,000 for speaking up.
Yes.
And again, in the meantime, they denied me access to my children many times because I have to go to the US to see my children and so on and so on. And they denied me access to my dying parent, beside all the other stuff. But in the meantime, I kept writing, and I got so much information from them, and also actually knowingly them making up stories and making up facts. I mean, I
Yes.
had a Minister of Justice lie to me, and then you show them later, show them the data out of the system, and it shows them they're outright lying, fabricating facts, and then it's quiet, and so on and so on. So, and after that court case in 2019, they started making continuous errors. I mean,
they're not continuous errors. It's an abuse of the process, and what they're doing is they're attacking you for pointing out their mistakes.
Yeah, but then so there's a couple of things I find out. I mean, so beside all of the financial issues I have, the IT system I got it even confirmed after 5 years writing, or 4 years writing, 5 years writing. I can't keep track of it. That the IT system doesn't comply to the US GAAP rules. So that's why your annual overview is never correct. So if you apply for the CRA, you're on the hook for the CRA. You have tax fraud. That's one thing. And then on my case, for example, it's more than 20,000, probably about 20,000 US dollars missing. So because it didn't arrive in the US, so somebody is taking money at 12%, and it cannot be 12%. It cannot be be exchange rate issues because the bank takes on average 3%. So somebody's taking money, but they don't want to open up the books. I can't get off MEP because I was in court last January. And again, it was overpayment. The judge decided that was an overpayment. It's a little bit complicated story, but I was an overpayment. And the lawyer of MEP couldn't get it together. She spent 2 hours elaborating. The lawyer of MEP spent 2 hours elaborating, and I had a really good judge. And then even after the session, she had to write the court order, and it took about a month to get that straightened out because they don't know the process, they don't know the business.
No,
and
that's their own. For me, it was shocking.
That's their own process, though. So if they have a process in place and they don't understand it, then what's the relevance of?
I can tell you. I can tell you. For example, a very simple example is I'm a payer, so I have to provide all my bank statements, the whole package, to them. But the receiver of the monies only has to sign a little piece of paper, I received it or not. I'm a financial guy. That would never fly as a financial auditor.
In fact, there's a case similar to that from Nova Scotia where I believe 2 sitting court judges are facing a multi-million-dollar lawsuit because of just this fact, the exchange of monies, where the one party had paid the child support or spousal support or whatever it was, and the other party claimed it was never received. And one party ended up in jail. And as far as I know, there's still an active lawsuit in that case going on right now for millions of dollars against 2 provincial court judges in Nova Scotia.
I know a case that's been well described in the book Parental of Christine Giancarlo, and I know the mother of this person very well. This guy ended up in jail and committed suicide. Similar, and the mother of this guy went, of course, to court and the whole shit. But of course, you can't go anywhere. They're not liable. So what I learned over the years, MEP can do whatever they want, basically, by law. Judges have no control over MEP, and also the judges state that also. So MEP does not have to comply with a court order. They say they do, but they don't. Otherwise, they would have corrected my court order straight away. They keep lying. The ombudsman, that's a real joke. If the ombudsman would function, what happened to me, and basically the children and my family, that would never have happened if the ombudsman would function, because this happens all the time.
You're right. It happens in New Brunswick and Nova Scotia, and I'd like to talk to you more about your case because I've been doing a documentary about just this whole process, and you have followed the same path I have and found out where the failures are in the system that allow these situations to continue and will continue for years.
I have documents that I admit, internal documents that I admit, we are scared for this guy like me. They're scared for me.
Yes.
What is he talking about? Is he going to sue us? I got calls from them to resolve the issues, but the only intention of the call was to find out if I was able to sue them. I have a director of MEP telling the deputy minister, "Can you answer me this letter because I'm afraid for him." And look, I'm a non-violent person. I just write and state facts, data, and off we go. And the other part I found out is MEP does not comply with any financial standards or accounting standards. Clients as well as lawyers use this knowledge of this dysfunctional organization for their own benefit. So you can also they can also abuse this other party by putting them under pressure because they know it's not correct. So I'm still have to meet the first lawyer or judge who sends their children to MEP. I mean, who's gonna go to a bank and say take 12% from my money and just fine me all the time? So I kind of summarized it also in my letters to MEP and the Minister of Justice and so on and so on. Your organization has several issues. I call it PTSD-M. Issues with people, training, systems, and dysfunctional management. And it covers my whole case. I got a lot of evidence for that. They don't want to answer my questions anymore, so I had a letter from Mr. Boscha, the assistant deputy minister, I believe, of Minister of Justice, said we don't answer your letters anymore. We have enough. So I thought, I was talking to friends of mine and said, well, maybe they ran out of lies. They ran out of, well, it's amazing. But I didn't, because
No,
I had Mrs. Cahill, another lawyer of MEP, sprouting out more lies, and my case manager sprouting out more lies afterwards and errors. So they didn't run out of lies. They didn't run out of
no,
stupid
they
stuff.
don't.
And
They don't.
the stupid stuff is, I'm not difficult. I just could have said, let's resolve this easily and move on. Move on to the next. I told them, let's move on to the next error then. The next error. So anyway, that's my experience with MEP. So I think I can help. I help a lot of people with MEP. You can't play with these people. Play in the sense that, oh yeah, I'm not going to pay, because the fines are often higher than actually the payments.
Yeah. Yeah. Again, these are tools used to threaten people with taking their driver's license, their jobs, their freedoms, and putting them in jail. It's an abuse of the system. It's an abuse of the power. It's abuse of the process.
And again, I come back to incompetence. These people are, it's very funny, we call it here the sunshine list. In Alberta, if you pay more than $120,000 with the government, you have to be put on a sunshine list. And I have documentation. Look, I stream data. Long story short, I stream data on people.
Mm-hmm.
So they're all scared to death. They'll complain about, all these people complain about the sunshine, they're on the sunshine list. But from my perspective, if you make more than $120,000, many people make $200,000 in MEP, you would expect them some professionalism, but they don't.
No.
And maybe my expectations are way too high, but that's, yeah. So my approach now at this stage is I make fun of them. I'm going to make more fun of them also in public, not in Canada because we know how the Canadian press has the unwritten law that they don't publish about this stuff. So
Yes.
I have a lot of other foreign press, but yeah, that's a different story. But I think it's time for now to have fun with them.
Yeah. So are they? I mean, in your view, are they set up to be more of a looting agency of the government?
It's a stakeholders, and all the point being is all MLAs know about it. The Auditor General here in Edmonton had a conversation with him. They all know about the incompetence there, but the Auditor General, for example, doesn't get any funds to do an audit on them. MLAs are all peeing in their pants. Well, they're the lawmakers. I have emails from MLAs. I have emails from MLAs, and they confirm, yeah, we all know this. I have emails from lawyers. They all know this drama, but it continues. How is that possible? As a lawmaker, you're making the law, and you let these people destroy people's lives. It's shocking, and you can't fight them because no lawyer will represent you because they're all scared. I interviewed the lawyers, and quite a few of them are very scared about being blacklisted.
Yes. Again, they're part of the system. They're not going to represent one client when they have so few judges that they have to present all their cases in front of for the rest of their career, which is going to be detrimental to their career if they decide to represent one client instead of.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, we can talk endlessly about MEP, but it's amazing to me. It was amazing what they can do. And nobody in common sense would send their clients to MEP because they're looting. And in some cases, I mean, I don't like it when men don't pay on time. That's that simple. You have to, if the court order is written and you're not agreeing with it, you have to go back to court. That's simple. But in the meantime, try to keep up your payments because it's for your kids at the end of the day. So that's my vision.
Yeah. A question for both of you.
Sure.
I mean, we know about how incompetent a lot of these, lawyers are. We know their interest. Their interest is all about the money. Do you guys think it's about time we have some sort of website that blacklists them so people know?
Can I start?
Go ahead.
Can I start, Bill?
Yeah.
Because I have a little bit, of maybe different vision. I'm a guy of data. Okay? So what you see happen in family law and the data, there's no data collection. The government doesn't collect proper data on divorce, and what you see, it's a lot of the data is outdated. If you look over to the government of Canada website, it's basically data out of 2010, I believe, or even before that. So from my perspective, this is about collecting data. And how do you collect data? I mean, I can go to rate a lawyer. You have all these websites to rate lawyers. Um, you have some angry people on there rating lawyers. You have some wonderful people rating lawyers. But these websites are all pretty much controlled also by lawyers, by the way.
Yeah.
So you can't really figure out, is this a good lawyer or not? Because I also hear stories of a lawyer here. He's a great lawyer. And the next case I see of this lawyer, it's a drama. So from my perspective, I think I would love to set up a website where people can submit a couple things. They can submit a court orders. They can submit data on the lawyer, how much it cost, different steps, what the experience is, but at least you have a sort of database, an actual database on facts, and you leave the emotions a little bit out. And then you can start saying, okay, what average lawyer costs so much, is this normal, and then you can compare benchmark lawyers instead of having often emotions involved. But I don't have the technology. And you talk a little bit about privacy issues, but you cannot publish these court orders, for example. But at least you get a bit of a feel for. You can put them in a database and say, okay, these are the 15 items I'm looking for. When was the parenting order done? What is the parenting result? What is the cost of the lawyer? The total cost of the lawyer? Did you go to trial or not to trial? What was or did you do it yourself? And you can do the same thing with judges, of course, because they're on the court order. But that would be my vision, Bill. I don't know what you think about that.
Well, there needs to be some civilian oversight because, like you said, there's lobbyist groups that have been for numerous years fighting against shared parenting legislation in Canada, equal shared parenting. Now, Nahanni in Alberta or Saskatchewan, she got up in front of the legislator and said that parental alienation has been debunked. I would put her in the class with the two groups. One of the two groups that are actively fighting against the recognition of equal shared parenting and that being the best option for children. That would be lawyers who are fighting against it, and feminists, and not feminists who are looking for equality, but feminists who want to have everyone be subservient to them. If you look at the custody and access for single parents and children in Canada, if there is a child growing up in a single parent household, 86% chance that is with a single mother, and only a 6% chance that is with a single father. Now, the US have done studies on this, and I just looked over this last night. 26 of the 27 active shooters in the United States came from fatherless homes. And we both know from the numbers in the United States that children growing up in fatherless homes have a much higher rate of dropping out of school, ending up in prison, becoming addicted. They have every disadvantage there is in life. Now, that there is for children that are being raised in single mother households, and children that are raised in their familial households with both parents. They don't have those disadvantages. And quite shockingly enough, if you look at children being raised in single father households, the statistics for them are the same as if being raised by two parents.
Yeah, I think that what I see. I mean, I don't know all the research on this, but 50-50 kids is the biggest. It will take away the biggest issue. And you see the same thing with children ending up in the criminal system. Yes, it's a one parent. Often it's one parent deal.
Mm-hmm.
What I see also, you have very radical females, but you also see very radical men. It's all caused by the same system,
Mm-hmm.
but they don't help our cause. You need balanced people and say, okay, there's two sides to a story, three sides to a story.
Yes,
But you need balanced people. You can't have
there
these
needs to
radical.
be equality throughout the system and how the decisions are made.
Yeah, yeah,
And that's currently not how it is being done, which is statistics show. Um, Ben, my phone is
It's
running
time.
really low
Yeah,
here, and I could be
yeah.
dying
We
off
almost,
it.
yeah, we're almost done. Yeah,
yeah.
we might as well done.
I have a couple of things I would suggest to people. At the end of the day, high conflict is consuming a lot of your energy and time, and it's very sad. No matter what, if you think you need mental help, get mental help. Do a course on how to deal with conflict. That's bringing a lot more than fighting in court, I think. Um, you don't need a lawyer to divorce, and it's quite simple. A lot of people do amicable divorce without even lawyers. For less
Yes.
than $500. Um, I want children. I want the parents to make their children proud of them. That uh, that the children should be proud of the parents, that they say, okay, yes, there was conflict, but they managed it. That we still love our parents, and so on and so on. And children do not forget. Children. We see programs. I'm from Holland originally, but I see programs in Holland and Germany on TV, public TV, about parental alienated children. Also, when they're in their 40s, different generations, and they all come back to the same conclusion: equal parenting. Uh, and a lot of parental alienated children were in their 40s or 50s that say, yeah, we can see now how much we missed out on our parents. The public broadcasting here doesn't do that yet, but in all these other countries they have these rules. The other thing I would like to say is get a support group. Um, help help each other, but also stay mentally stable. Look at your own health first. The only way, if you're mentally, emotionally healthy yourself, you can move forward. And if possible, stay out of the system. Don't feed the system. The more you
Yeah.
feed the system, the more business they have. The easiest way to resolve is staying out of the system, because then you starve the system. That's a little bit the few messages I would like to give people. It's not worth the fighting and bickering is not worth it. I mean, I gave in my case, I helped the case manager over the case manager. I was in case manager at the end of the day. After cleaning up a lot, I was able to get into case management, and I gave all the money away basically. I said I have to move on. I cannot be, and my wife wanted to move on too. But I helped the case manager mediate. Otherwise, we would have been in court for a lot longer. And I thought about my kids. Yes, I don't see my kids, and so on and so on. But they'll figure it out. They'll come back and say, okay, yes, it was a difficult time. Now we move on in life. I hope my kids are not. My kids will see see the bigger picture too.
That's great. Thank you, Edmond. Bill, any final message here? Okay, so we lost Bill. His phone died, I believe. But Edmond, thank you so much. It's been very, very informative. Um, so your organization, do they like provide services to anybody that would want to sort of reach out to you, and how do they go about doing that?
Yeah, so we are basically Edmonton based, but we do also cases around Alberta. But during COVID, we were a little bit less active. But now we slowly want to start up again. We have meetings, but the city of Edmonton, after 30 years, denied us now a space to meet.
Mhm.
So now we're looking for space, but
Okay.
that's a whole different story. But so we do basically cases mainly in Alberta, but we also deal with other provinces. Then we have, it's my understanding you have a Mackenzie friend come in
Yeah.
one day.
Yeah.
He
Next week.
yeah,
No, next 2 weeks. Yeah.
yeah, he does cases in Alberta, but I also
Mhm.
see that he does cases all over the place, because at the end of the
Yeah.
day, nowadays it's all online.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, we mainly cater to Edmonton, Alberta, and you have to understand also a lot of people don't volunteer it too much, because when they divorce, I mean everything is settled, they move on,
Yeah. Yeah. That's
and
true.
the volunteers, I respect them a lot, because they put a lot of time and effort in this. We don't do the work for them. We don't do the work for people, but we help and guide them to do the work themselves,
Right.
because that's the only
Right.
way to do this.
Right. I will send one guy. I know there's a gentleman in Edmond who reached out to me last week.
Yeah,
He was in the process of looking for a lawyer and was asking for a recommendation. I said, no, don't go don't go that path. So I will connect him.
the
The
McKenzie
more,
friend, and he probably tell you that too, how he works. and it's a bit of a kind of different rockets, and different.
Right.
You always can have access to a lawyer if you have to, but in general, learning to self-rep yourself, you also learn your case, you learn the system,
Right.
and you can do a better job for your case than an average lawyer in general. Not
Right.
always, but in general.
Right. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Edmond. And
Okay.
thank you to our audience as well. We're back again next Sunday, the same time. And if you have the chance to join us again next week, by all means, we'd love to have you on for another section of our podcast. Thank you very much. Have yourselves a good night, and we'll see you back again next Sunday.
Thank you, Ben.